Welcome back, friends. We are here again, Lauren Whiteurst and Adam Brooks.
I just can't stay away.
And it's so good. I just love you hanging out here. It's
I
so
love
good.
you
That's
hanging out
all.
here as well.
That's all. Just I love you. That's all. I was.
And we love you guys.
Oh, heck yes.
Love you hanging out with us right now.
At what point did you get to the point where you were comfortable saying those three little words?
First, it had to stop meaning nothing.
Yeah.
Because it was a perfunctory thing for so long. Like it was a part of a routine and it had just been completely desensitized.
Mm-hmm.
And then it shifted, I think probably sometime mid to late 20s. You know, it really shifted from this perfunctory thing you say when you get off the phone or this thing you say before you go to bed at night to more feeling, more energy, more feeling,
Okay.
more energy.
That's right. That is so interesting. So there was never a fear of saying it?
No, it went from meaning nothing to meaning something rather than meaning too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Meant nothing in every situation?
Well, I mean,
Not nothing, but
I tried to get more creative when expressing care for someone because I grew up feeling like I love you was just something that people said.
yeah.
And oh God, that sounds way too much like it's indicative of my childhood.
I'm like, you can keep going. This is great. I'm here for it.
It just scratched the surface and I was like, okay, so why did it mean nothing? Oh, damn. It meant nothing because it would have meant something if I had grown up feeling like there was great love conveyed with the words at the same time.
Yeah.
But instead, I felt like they were perfunctorily performed as part of a ritual. You stand up, you say, I love you, you go to bed. And if you don't say it, you did the ritual wrong and you have to start over.
That is so true.
Right.
Hugs and kisses, man.
Yep.
So if you did it wrong,
And you had to start over.
what happened?
You had to start over. You had to keep doing it until you performed it correctly. I can remember one time I was angry and I didn't want to give a hug and I didn't want to say I love you before I went to bed. And
Did you get punished?
emotional pressure was exerted until I caved
Wow.
because the act of compliance was more important than the sincerity of the action.
So I was actually about to ask if I love you was then also potentially a manipulation.
Oh, it was definitely an acceptance of control, I think. Because to say I love you back to someone who was saying it to me was an acceptance that I would bend to their rules.
Ah, interesting. So it was contractual.
As a father, I actively decided not to do this with my children.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point in the Mormon church, one of my children was approached by a member of the congregation who wanted a hug.
Okay.
And my daughter said, I don't want to hug you.
That seems fair.
And the adult got angry with the child and tried to pressure them into giving a hug, and then came to complain to us because our child wouldn't give them a hug. And it occurred to me then that physical affection was being used as a sign of deferral to their authority. It was a
Wow.
recognition of their superiority in the congregation to a child, and that it was expected that they could have whatever they wanted from a child, and all they had to do was ask. And I think that at least in the early days of my childhood, that was very accurate. That the expectation was I would give to meet emotional needs regardless of whether or not my needs were met.
Well, because you weren't a person.
No, children are meant for working farms and doing chores and giving to adults. I knew a guy in Argentina who came from a strongly Chinese culture.
Okay.
And in that culture, one of the responsibilities of the children was to give massages to their elders. And
Like young children
Young
or
children.
all children?
All children.
Okay. So it started young.
If you were not an adult, then it was your responsibility to give massages to anyone older than you until their physical needs were met. And I think that that's another example of a similar experience where, as a child, your responsibility isn't to grow up and experience life. Your responsibility is to give back to the adults who are giving you too much already.
So interesting because I feel like on some level it makes sense. You know, like we we all share a household, we all work as a team, we all, we all give to each other, and that's kind of what makes it all work.
But that's different from what I'm describing. I
Right.
think that what I'm describing is actually more closely associated to the Mormon version of what God is. And that
Okay.
is that God gave you everything and you're indebted to him. And then Jesus paid for your sins and you're indebted to him. And no matter how much you give back, you can't give back enough. So you better spend your whole life trying because you're a worm. And I think that just like Mormon parents set themselves up to their child as if they were God, they set themselves up in the same way, saying, I have given you so much, you can never repay me. So you had better do everything you can because you're a worm.
I feel like we should have started this podcast with trigger
Trigger
warning.
warning. We might be talking about religion.
Because we were both raised in a very religious environment and
High demand.
very high demand, religious environment, and both kind of worked our way out of it in different ways and dealt with that religious trauma in different ways. Because I feel like for me, the path was, how do I get to a place where I'm comfortable with religion or spirituality or anything and have it not be this shame spiral or get sucked into another cult type environment.
Sure, another high demand organization. You know, it's interesting how being raised in one high demand organization primes you to be part of another high demand organization. It's almost like it creates in you a space that can be filled by another high demand organization if it comes along. It's something that I've been aware of and have kept myself aloof from any organizations for the last 4 or 5 years for that reason, because I keep thinking, if I go to this club, if I go hang out with the Masons, the Kiwanis, the Rotary, or, Toastmasters or anybody, I might just get sucked into it like I got sucked into the Mormon church.
Because it doesn't allow you any space for nuance at all.
Right.
You are either fully in and committed and this is the only way, or you're not. Or
They've had this message for years to stay in the boat, and at the Mormon church.
That's the term, stay in the boat?
Stay in the boat. Stay in the boat.
Okay.
Stay in the boat. And stay in the boat means keep believing, don't question, doubt your doubts, and keep being us. Stay in the crowd.
Yeah.
And it doesn't leave room for exploration outside of that. So it's interesting the boundaries that I was able to put up as an adult and the respect that I show my children that I wasn't able to feel as a child.
Yeah.
And how I think a lot of that came from the religious organization around our upbringing.
See, and I didn't know that. Even as an adult and, realizing that I had all of these traumas and like that I saw the world differently than a lot of people around me.
Right.
I'm like, why do I see things differently? I couldn't put it together.
Why is my world so different from everybody else's world?
Like even, I stopped practicing the Mormon faith when I was about 17. I moved out. I started, this like adult part of my life.
For anyone who's wondering, when we say Mormon, we mean the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, not the FLDS or the RLDS or the Community of Christ. We were raised in the one that's based in Salt Lake and sends missionaries out with white shirts and name tags.
That is accurate.
Yes.
Yes, that is accurate. So I stopped practicing when I was around 17 and then left that life behind. And I was so young that I was like, well, this is just life. This is what everyone thinks, right? I go out into the world and then I start seeing things that are different. I'm like, wait, you don't think that way?
Hold on. Our worlds are different. Our thoughts are different. How is that?
And then I couldn't figure out what was religious trauma, what was because of the religion, or what was because of familial upbringing or, proximity to, regions or whatever.
I think this speaks to one of the great failings of the Mormon church, and that is that it's such an all or nothing proposition. Because you either wholeheartedly believe all of the teachings or you're an apostate. You either abide by all of the rules or you're unworthy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't jive with any kind of thinking outside of the Mormon church.
Right.
So when for instance, if you're raised in a traditional believing Mormon family, when one day you have to mix with people outside of the church, it's very jarring.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's difficult to associate with people who aren't Mormon.
You're encouraged to have other friends that share your beliefs and
Or to convert people.
yeah, or to bring in your people who are not Mormon and have them join the church.
Because the Mormon way is the only way. But when you start to see a crack in that, you start to see that it's not the only way, and that in fact there are beneficial ideas and practices and traditions outside of the Mormon faith, and that there are big holes in the Mormon faith. And since it's an all or nothing proposition, it often falls apart.
Yeah.
Because the way that it's preached, everything is tied to everything. And if one thing is wrong, then it's all wrong. And if one thing is true, then all other things build upon that. And I don't think it's a very healthy structure.
So the way I take in information, the way that I experience life, the way is through feeling. I know everybody kind of does it a little bit differently, but for me, it's through feeling. And so someone asked me when I was 11 years old, very young, if I was going to grow up and get married in the Mormon temple.
Oh.
And I said no. And of course, that was the wrong answer. It was the wrong answer. And I think I probably embarrassed my parents and probably got in trouble from this person. Oh, why wouldn't you get married in the Mormon church?
Also, you're not alone in this. I can't count the number of times I spoke to people who were strong, believing, active members of the Mormon church who were ridiculed as children for not giving the right answers and giving the honest answer.
Yeah.
And then because they responded to that ridicule, they flipped. They changed. They modified their responses to give the right answer, even though it wasn't authentic.
So I was just being honest at the time.
Yeah.
And I think that going with that gut response and being honest, allowed me to continue to be honest with myself.
I'm so jealous.
I'm sorry. As I got older. And so then when I moved out, I was like, okay, well, I followed the rules. I did what our parents wanted. I did all the quote unquote right things. I said all the right things and behaved the right way. And now I'm an adult and I can do what I want. And just again, going with how I was feeling, if anybody had asked me, well, why did you leave? Or did they do something wrong? I would have said, I don't know. It's probably fine. Anybody can, join that church or believe that way if they want to. It just wasn't right for me. But for you, it was a completely different experience.
Oh, I drank the Kool-Aid early and I stayed dug in for a long time.
Yeah. So you went on a mission.
I did.
For the Mormon church.
2 years in Argentina where I met a lot of different kinds of people. Mm-hmm. The most spectacular people I met were not members of the church. And some of them became members of the church. And I kind of want to reach out and apologize to them now. I'm so sorry that I couldn't just be friends with you and build a meaningful connection without also trying to give you something that was actually damaging to me.
Yeah. It was maybe it's not damaging for them, though. Maybe it's something that was good for them.
The Mormon church broke me in ways that have made me who I am.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wonder what I would have been if I was raised in a more caring, loving, supportive environment.
Yeah.
But you're right. Every journey brings you to the present and gives you a specific set of strengths and weaknesses. And what doesn't kill you makes you stronger unless it kills you later.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So you went on a mission, you got married in the temple, you raised a family.
I did all the things. It was actually so stalwart and so aggressively pushing the church propaganda that I was teaching my children to teach the lessons that I taught as a missionary when they were barely old enough to read. And so they were memorizing lesson topics and how to teach them at very young ages. And I was incredibly proud of this.
Of course.
I had my own little, what would it be? Mormon youth something,
Yeah, you created your own little small group or
my
Mormon
own
posse.
Tiny propaganda machine.
Sure.
And it was, it was self-fueling.
Yeah.
Because as I encouraged my children to preach Mormon gospel, they fueled in me the fire that said that Mormon gospel was correct. What was fascinating when it all started to fall apart was I was very concerned that perhaps I had given them too much impetus to believe all of the Mormon teachings. And so when Zoe and I decided that we weren't going to go to church anymore, I went to my children and I said, guys, we've made this decision not to go to church. Tell me your thoughts.
Yeah.
And each one in turn said, "Oh, I never believed it. I never believed it.
Wow.
I was going to go because you wanted me to go, but like as soon as I was an adult, I was just going to stop going." And I thought, "Oh, we caught this early enough that they're still able to be honest with us."
Yeah.
Because we never, like, we didn't get to the point where we broke them of that honesty.
Well, and I feel like from a, just a spiritual and connected perspective, when you're a child, you're so much more open to understanding what's out there. You feel things more deeply because you are uncalloused. And so that gut feeling, I mean, you ask a 2-year-old what they want to eat or what they want to do or if they want to give you a hug, and
Right.
they are going to tell you, they are going to give you the honest response.
They're not going to give you the response shaped by a lifetime of beatings.
Right.
No, they're going to give you an honest response. Was it Hans Christian Andersen who wrote The Emperor's New Clothes?
Maybe.
But that was quite some time ago.
Yeah.
And the moral of the story was that adults and older people can be programmed to play along with silliness, and a young child will not play along because no one has beaten it into them yet.
No
right?
one has convinced them that they have to behave a certain way to fit into society.
Yeah, and I think that's really valuable to know.
So what was that turning point for you?
It was 2020, and I, strangely, leading up to the shutdown where all of the churches were closed for at least 6 months,
Yeah.
I had been actively attending meetings during the week for scripture study linked to the church's BYU Pathways program. So I was going to start taking college classes from them at a reduced rate. And in return, I had to attend these weekly meetings in which we shared spiritual messages and complied with a specific set of rules.
Okay.
And they bothered me so much.
What about them bothered you?
I didn't like the structure. I
Okay.
didn't like how forced everything was.
Yeah.
I didn't like how inauthentic everybody was.
Yeah.
It was
Going through the motions.
yeah, it was obviously going through the motions, and everyone was. And the longer I was in it, the further I felt from the authentic bubbling up from within me connection I had previously to the Mormon faith. It was like their own program was poisoning me to their programs.
Wow.
And
That's
that-
a mistake.
I know. They didn't know.
They didn't know.
They didn't know how much damage they were doing with that stupid program. I'm grateful to them
Yeah.
for damaging me that way.
Yes. You're like, thank you for opening my eyes.
Thank you for breaking the thing that held me captive for
Yep.
so long. But then in 2020, I had stopped going to those classes because they bothered me so much. And I thought, if I really want to take college classes, I can find a better way.
Yeah.
I don't have to get all this religious indoctrination just to get discounted rates on college classes.
It's not the only college out there.
And then we had 6 months away from church. And the longer we were away from church, the more comfortable and happier my life became.
Interesting.
And sometime near the end of that period, I think it was in April, I was in a Zoom meeting that was supposed to be spiritually edifying, but it was actually just 2 hours of different people telling us to look within ourselves, find our failings, and do better,
Oh,
which I think is a common message in the church,
yeah.
to vaguely guilt people into their own improvement. And I saw it for what it was.
Yeah.
And it all just kind of fell apart. And I said, this is worthless. Why am I giving so much time, energy, attention, intention, so much of my life to this organization that isn't giving back to me, but is actively taking more from me
Right.
at every opportunity? I can't remember how many times, like, it's beyond, it's without fathom, but so many times I sat in Sunday meetings with groups of men my age and in similar circumstances who talked about how difficult it was to balance church responsibilities with family responsibilities, with the responsibilities that just keep them alive.
Yeah.
Because I think the Mormon church expects people to be 3 people,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
because they have to put in so much work in each area of their lives, and it's unrealistic and it's
Yeah.
damaging.
Yeah. Well, and when you set that sort of unrealistic expectation, then you can keep people in a place where they feel chronic shame. And if you feel chronic shame, then you're willing to stay in a space where you're like, but if you stay here, we'll still make you okay.
Let me create a product and then be the sole provider of the product.
Yeah.
And keep you working in my organization to buy the product. Yeah, it's a classic high demand organization tactic. I've been surprised since I left at how closely the Mormon church follows the bite model of control. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's a model that was developed to make it easy to recognize cults.
Okay.
And I don't remember, it's an acronym, BITE, but it outlines a lot of different ways that high demand organizations implement control, ranging from what you can and can't wear to what you can and can't eat to who you can and can't socialize with to what you can and can't do or think about or talk about.
Yep. And then all the shame that comes with it if you do any one of those things.
In every measurable point, the Mormon church comes out looking like a cult that does damage.
Ugh.
And they do it with tax exempt status for a $100 billion investment fund. And I have to think, this is not an organization that was built for the betterment of society. It was an organization that was built for the betterment of one family that was then, continued for another family, for another, and now is used to enrich the organization over the entire world.
Yeah. And it's so hard because I know that there are a lot of people out there within the organization that are very happy there. And I don't want you to think that in any way we are trying to contribute to that shame.
It's a personal experience.
It is a personal experience. And I definitely want you to follow your own path and do what feels right for you. But from our experience, the trauma from being raised in that environment, and then all the relearning of how to live in a world that's not quite so black and white, that can have some nuance. And
it's all nuance. The entire world is nuance. But the other thing about that is, and I heard it over and over and over again on my way out, that there are good people in the organization, and you shouldn't throw out the bad with the good. But if I stuck around for the few good people that I knew or that I found, would I also be sticking around for the predators that live in the same midst? Because the Mormon church is rife with emotional, sexual, financial predators who work the system to their benefit.
Yeah.
They hide in plain sight because the church welcomes people who have problems and then treats them as if they're something special because they're there. But really what they're doing is they're exposing children to sexual predators and then covering up lawsuits. They're exposing their membership to people who are really just there to try and build relationships to get your money. And over and over and over again, they're exploiting effort from volunteer members in the name of bettering the name of the church. I mean, every time the church sends disaster relief forces to some hurricane or earthquake or what have you, it's the members giving their own time for free.
Yeah.
And then the church taking credit for sending them there.
Yeah.
Nothing about it enriches the lives of the membership, and everything about it enriches the name and reputation of the organization.
I mean, it's so funny because it's so deeply ingrained in me. You're even saying these things and I'm like, oh, but don't speak ill about it. Oh, but don't say anything bad about it. And so I'm like, my anxiety is growing as you're saying these things.
And maybe we can sit with that for a moment. Just examine Socratically, what if we did sit with this feeling? What if we did speak ill of it?
But my thought is, within organizations, the good that you have is community. Yeah. And that's within most organizations. And I think that's what so many people are pulled to within the Mormon faith, because the community is built in and it is designed to, just like we said, suck you in and keep you there.
High demand organizations do.
Yeah.
And there's a podcast I really like called A Little Bit Culty, and they invite representatives of and people who have been in high demand organizations every week and have conversations about what those high demand organizations do, the good, the bad, ranging all the way from Christian mega churches to Hindu religions to the woman who hosts the podcast was part of Nexium.
Okay.
which was the subject of The Vow on HBO.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, and so it's a really great podcast, but what they all have in common is people join because they need to feel like they belong somewhere.
Right.
They need a community, they need people, they need a tribe.
Yeah.
And an organization that is that strong provides a real tribe. It just also provides fertile breeding ground for problems.
Well, and what we talked about before, not in this podcast, but a previous one, was about being open and vulnerable and kind of finding your tribe.
It's powerful.
Finding the people that you can feel connected to and just being intentional about that. And so if you choose to do it through an organization like High Demand Religion, then that's just one way to go about it. But there are other ways as well. And we just wanted to let you know that this is our experience. It might not be everyone's experience, but this is ours and how it affected us. And there is hope for you if you had a similar experience. You don't always have to have that trauma that reigns over you for the rest of your existence.
Also, if you decide to be part of a high demand organization of any kind, maybe just take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Maybe just remember this is just a group of people. The ideals may be good, the principles may be good, but if the thing ever turns bad, I can leave. Because you can take what's good and leave what's bad.
Years ago, I couldn't even tell you when, I told myself that I was always going to reserve the right to change my mind. And I just started saying that all the time.
Yes.
And when I did, it gave me so much freedom.
Yes.
I was like, I can reserve the right to change my mind about anything.
About anything.
At any time.
Forever.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
That's power.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Thanks for listening.
Sorry for all the triggers if this was triggering, but we'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Was your experience the same? Do you know people that were in that environment? So curious. All the questions for you. Let us know.
I hope you'll sit with the triggers.
Yeah.
Be there for a moment. Examine what it is that makes you feel, because there's power there.
Yep. Like, subscribe, follow. We're on every social media platform, and we will see you next time. Bye, friends.